The next section for TA southbounders is from Queenstown to the town of Anau, and it's 121.6 miles. I put this in here, disclaimer, mileage may vary for many reasons. The first reason is the Queenstown mileage itself. So as you saw in the prior scenes, I started back in Frankton because that's where we left our footsteps the day prior to catch an Uber into Queenstown. So went back to the grocery store there to connect the footsteps and finish the regular miles into Queenstown proper. And this is Queenstown proper. Once you get here, again, many options. So I decided to walk the entire kind of road portion all the way around to Greenstown track. Some people decide to catch a shuttle from here. Some people decide to do this route burn track, get a hitch up to Glen Rocky. There's a lot of options that you can do around here. So again, mileage may vary depending on the route you take, depending if you decide to get a shuttle. It can vary for a lot of potential reasons. So do your research before you get into Queenstown or when you get into Queenstown to decide what you want to do here. So if for some reason you decide to do the road walk, when you leave Queenstown, it's not that bad actually. There are portions of track that surprised me. I didn't plan on there being any single track throughout the day, but as you see here, there's these little pockets of track along the coastline just to break up your day a little bit. And they're really nice. They're built for bikers, so the grade's pretty standard. There are more ups and downs than you would standardly think on a quote-unquote road walk, but that's just the flavor of the day. And it does get confusing sometimes in here. There's a lot of junctions for these like little bike routes, so just stay aware if you are doing that because you won't have the quote-unquote correct map systems since the TA map systems do not cover this portion itself. So do that prep work beforehand. It will pop you out in this park. You can get water there, and then it will pop you back onto the road for a little more road miles. There are these kind of kilometer marks every 5K or so. And here's another section I pointed out, 12-mile delta. There is camping available there if you want to split up your day for some reason. I do want to point out as well that the road itself, the first 17 miles itself from Queenstown proper until you hit Windy Point or Rats Point, I believe, is the quote-unquote hardest portion of the road. It is these larger roller coasters, like you're going up, you're going down. It's kind of, the road was built into the cliffside and it's pretty jagged. But once you get to the Windy Point / Rats Point, that's when it really starts to kind of grade out a little bit. You have longer portions of flat and not so much steep ascents and descents on the road. But those 17 or 18 miles in the beginning are a lot of roller coastery. So beautiful views along there. I'm shaking my head here just because it was quite windy. As you see, I wrapped the buff around my ears. Would heavily recommend bringing something to mitigate that wind noise because it just whips off the lake. And would also recommend packing out water. Again, there's that lake that you could quote unquote access, but it wouldn't be preferable, at least in my opinion. So if you decide to go on forwards, there's that little kind of touristy spot that you saw there, and it's just really broad sweeping views of the lake. Here's the more kind of flatter portions of the road, and once you get it past Windy Point, depending on the time of day, this is when the car or the traffic starts kind of dying down. I think most people go to that Bennett's Lookout a few scenes ago or to the town itself of Glen Rocky, so the traffic itself really is not that bad. I can't stress that enough. There is small portions of shoulders every so often, but the traffic is not that bad. So if you get into Glen Rocky, there is a camping area that you can camp in if your miles link up. A little small kind of corner store, wouldn't rely on it for resupply. But if you decide to go past the town of Glen Rocky, you'll ultimately go in kind of in a U around this mountain straight ahead of you. Epically gorgeous. I had one of my most fantastic days along the entire TA on this road walk portion, and it wasn't even official miles. I'm pointing out where the route goes. It kind of does this large U, as I said, back around that kind of mountainside because it has to get over 2 rivers. That's why there's this extremely large detouring effect because you can't swim the lake and you can't really ford these rivers. So this is the first river. You have to connect into a bridge to get across it. It doesn't look that bad, quote-unquote fordable, but again, you're having to walk that entire way out of the way anyway, so might as well just take the bridge. I was just celebrating hitting the 40-mile mark right there, and it's just gorgeous. Depending on your mileage, depending on your day, you'll be walking late into the night, and it's just really, really gorgeous around there. Second river is here, Dart River. Dark out, dark, so I couldn't film Dart River, so that is another river that you have to ford across. And again, the miles here are super flat. It does transition to gravel road a few miles before the campsite of Kinloch, And this is Kinloch. It's kind of a little pseudo village. I say village because there are buildings around there. Look into that if you do decide to stay there. And if you want to push on, you have a little bit of a window to camp in. So as you can see, I forgot a trekking pole and had to use a stick to set up the tent. I just kept that in there because I thought that was a cool piece of footage. So the second day, you are going to get back into official TA track, depending where you camp on the previous day. Again, I just kept this in here because I thought that was amusing. I don't condone that type of stuff, but I thought that was quite amusing. And there's a lot of water as you get closer and closer towards the Greenstone track, more of those creeks that kind of go right across the roadbed there. Again, it comes down to preference, opinion, whatever have you. Many people choose many different routes to get into the Greenstone track. Shuttle, route burn, cross country, who knows. But there's that giant quote-unquote obstacle called the Queenstown Lake that you do have to get around somehow. So eventually you'll get back into the Greenstone track. In the Greenstone track parking lot, it's a wide open area. It's down in that kind of U of the valley right there. And it has a lot of easily accessible stuff. It has water, it has bathrooms. It's a big touristy spot. So hop in there, get prepped because the next section, she's a doozy. So when you start the Greenstone track itself, pack out food, as I was pointing there, and get ready. The first portion of it is graded for, at least in my opinion, more touristy type feel. It's a wider track. It's not sharp ups, sharp downs. You are doing those micro ups and downs of New Zealand proper, but overall the track quality is pretty excellent until you hit Greenstone Hut proper. Once you hit Greenstone Hut proper, quickly the track quality changes because, again, in my own opinion or kind of assumption here, I think a lot of tourists end up going to Greenstone track, so they beat down the trail just by the consistent numbers going through there. So a lot of hikers do decide to stay at Greenstone Hut. And Greenstone Hut is a large hut. It can fit, I think, upwards of 20 folks. I didn't film it. I filmed like a very outside view of it, didn't film the inside, but it is if you want to stay there, just look deeper into that. So the mileage to get there, as I said, kind of standard quality track, probably more of the excellent track you've experienced up until this point in the TA and in New Zealand, just because it is a hotspot or hub for tourists. So a lot of good signs will keep you on path. You don't really have to check your maps. Disclaimer, you really don't have to check your maps a whole lot through there. It's just very kind of excellent track through there. That was Greenstone Hut. I just showed you right there. Many places to camp, a lot of spots to stay. This is when the track quality changes. Right here, really stay aware. Go left, do not drop back down to the riverbed, even though there's markers that bring you back down to the riverbed. This is a mistake. We're not supposed to be here right now. We ended up having to cross country back to the left to get to trail proper. Again, it's a very confusing junction right after Greenstone Hut, so just stay aware. It is marked down to the riverbed, but that is not where the trail goes. You're supposed to be climbing out of Greenstone Hut, not descending. So just keep that information on hand. Once you get back to official trail, we have ended up getting back up there. You have a lot of bushwhacking / kind of jungle gymnastics to do for anywhere in the ballpark of 2 to 3 miles. A lot of blowdowns through here. Don't know the specific reasons why this piece of trail had the most blowdowns we'd experienced pretty much up until that point in New Zealand. It's just that chunk of 2 or 3 miles is just blowdown city. So once you finally break free of that, you start hitting more of this tussock field, and it's kind of cross-country in a way, pseudo-cross-country. There are these markers, as you see, but a lot of the time, the track will just end, and you're just going from marker to marker. So it's just slow going. You kind of have to stop at the next marker, find the next marker. As you can see, it's sometimes close to head-high grass, so it is slower going. It will impact your pace. This day, the first half to Greenstone, easy. Second half for Greenstone, further, a little more difficult. This is Tapu Hut, 4-person bunk hut about. It is queen-size mattresses, which is nice. So we decided to stay here. Ultimately, we wanted to go further, but it was too nice of an opportunity to pass up, and it was just a really ideal location and ideal hut. So next day, if you're leaving from Tapu Hut, again, that first portion of your day is going to be what you kind of experienced getting to the hut itself. It is mostly that kind of cross-country, post-hiking, a little bit of single track, kind of hybrid type stuff. Sometimes there's great single track as you see here, and sometimes there's not so great single track as you see here. It's post to post. It goes kind of up and down these rolling kind of hills through there. Got to climb underneath some barbed wire, which is always fun. So yeah, as you can see, I kept this piece of film in here because I'm just looking. I thought this was an ideal piece of film to show you kind of how confusing it was. It's just looking everywhere around, where's the next orange post? And then you hit single track. So there's really no rhyme or reason to it that I found. It's just, it goes back and forth just constantly. So be prepared for that. Those first few miles from Tapu Hut itself will take you longer than anticipated because the elevation profile makes it look easy. The elevation profile, as you know at this point, if you've watched these videos, if you've hiked the TA, when it's flat is when you need to worry sometimes. So ultimately, this track will lead you into the next hut called Boundary Hut. Gets a little more overgrown that last half mile into there. This bridge will signify that you're breaking out of that overgrowth and that kind of cross-country style. Here's the inside of Boundary Hut. Didn't really film the outside. Magpie found a nice little hunting magazine to read while we ate lunch. And here I'm pointing at where, again, your mileage may vary. So the official TA is on that left side of that lake, and I'm pointing at Mavora Lake's campsite, and what we're planning to do is an unofficial alternate along the road portion. From the information from 2022 to 2023, not many people did the right side of the lake due to the overgrowth. And as I've talked before in depth on other videos, a lot of the time, at least in my assumption, the way the TA handles maintenance in some of these portions is just crowds or more people beating down the track. And since people weren't doing that track portion, it was just so overgrown, washed out. Again, recommend not doing it or recommend doing it. It is your option, but we decided not to and just paralleled it. It's about the same mileage. The track we took or road we took or two track maybe was like 2 or 3 miles longer, but it's pretty much the same thing. It's one side of the lake compared to the other. One, you're just going to be in a tussock field. This side, you can just do easy stepping. So that was Mavora Lake's camp, large campsite. It kind of stretches along the lakeside for a few miles. It does have water accessible there, as I showed you in a past scene. And you're kind of just doing this 2-track stepping for a while through beautiful forests. You just kind of go around these lakes, and the track, you can literally look right across the lake and see it. So you hit this junction, and this junction signifies when the road starts getting busier. And I say busier, it's probably a car per hour, but I don't know if it's logging trucks or rural farm workers, but they are hauling down this road, so just be very careful. This bridge, the legality of the camping along this section, you're going to have to cut back into the track if your miles link up. That sign, not bridge, that was the bridge. That sign recommends you to go half a mile off to get back into legal camping. It depends how your miles link up. If you try to just do the entire road that day, you won't have to worry about camping, but we had to junction back into the official trail to have a legal camp spot. Nowhere along that road did we see any legal camp spots, so just be aware about that. So I kept this piece long too, the wild camp to wild camp, with options to go into Te Anau. We did not go into Te Anau, but we wished we would have. It is a hitch off trail, but I'll get to that here shortly. So you have more just flat kind of valley 2-track walking, very easy. You can hold a standard pace on this, and eventually this 2-track will lead you back into the official TA, which is actually the same road. The official TA comes onto the same road, joins it, and does a few miles along there. So it's very standard, very easy. Again, recommend packing out the water. When you find a good source, just fill up and just kind of walk with it, because it is a lot of rural kind of pasture type farmland. I'm pointing there to where I thought the official trail was. I couldn't really see it. Again, I didn't look hard, but I really couldn't see where the junction was. But then our map system said that we were back on the official TA. So you continue this long road, super long road, dusty, easy walking. Here's more of that kind of pasture field I was talking about. That's why I say when you find a good water source, just fill up and pack it out. Just always bring extra. You junction into a paved road, and this is a paved road that you can start your hitch experience if you want to start to try to get into Te Anau. Again, the next section is long if you don't go into Te Anau, so it's your own preference. I would recommend it. I'm pointing behind Magpie here. The trail continues that way. That's the road. This is right on trail, this kind of coffee shop. So if you want to get to a good hitch spot, this might be the best place to try to yogi a hitch and just hop out on the road and try to get into Te Anau. Again, we wish we would have. Cannot recommend it enough. This section is quite long without any official town stops if you don't go into Te Anau itself. So if you continue past there, I was pointing at the saddle that you're ultimately climbing to. If you see that U in the mountains over at Magpie's right shoulder, that's ultimately where you're climbing to. Now it's over Magpie's left shoulder. You hit this hut. As soon as you get into the bush line, I didn't film it. I wanted to be polite of the hikers around. But if you decide to push past that hut, you start a ascent. And there was a lot of kind of information around this ascent that it was super hard. The ascent itself to the unnamed saddle is actually not that bad. There are some more overgrown portions that will kind of cut into your pace itself, but overall the trail wasn't that bad. A couple blowdowns. It's kind of standard stuff at this point in New Zealand. There's not any giant washouts. There's narrower track at portions than you would prefer, but we were kind of worried going into it, and we got to the top quicker than we anticipated. It wasn't nearly as bad as some people made it out. This was probably the hardest portion as I'm filming here, the washout. It's just very narrow track, but it's not necessarily quote-unquote sketchy. It's just very narrow, so you just got to take your time across it. This is the top. A giant orange triangle will mark it. It's an unnamed saddle, and it's just very jungly up at the top. We thought the descent was far harder, dropping down the backside, because the backside, in our opinion, was steeper, more muddy, slower going, and just overall kind of more difficult, again, in our opinion. So when you drop down the backside, really wouldn't plan on camping. There was no camping up at the saddle until you hit a place called Tussock Field, or on your maps, just Tussocks. This is it. There's a good couple camp spots around here. Nice creek accessible right through here, and you could pitch a tent and get ready for the day ahead, because you're about to get into some tussocks. As I point out there, it's very apt the way it's called here. It is a tussock dream. All right, let's get it.